Hello, this is an overview of the Judgement Defenders for patch 9, which is early 2020. So just a quick rundown of the Defender heroes. Donrakr the Minotaur Shaman, Sir Marcus the Human Knight, Sharn the Orc Guardian, Skol the Mystic, Sky the Elf Monk, and Rommel the Dwarf Warrior. So what are the pros of Defenders in general, and what's their role in the game? They have strong defensive stats, so they're good at taking hits, and in doing so they can protect your other heroes. They're also good at holding board positions that lets them contest shrines, and they also have a generally high soul harvest stat, or medium soul harvest stat, that lets them act as secondary soul gazers. The downsides are they're not amazing at doing damage, and uh, because doing damage and harvesting souls are the ways that you win the game, they don't really contribute as much towards winning. They're more about you not losing by trying to prevent your opponent from harvesting souls. So just a quick overview of defenders by the numbers. So you can see here that most of them have a lower melee score than the aggressors, with an average of 6, Skol being an exception with a lower 5. In terms of damage, Thrommel stands out. He has a great damage track, but his attack does cost 2 actions, which means you're only going to be able to use it once a round. So it's the highest damage track in the game, but it's deceptive because it only happens once a round. In terms of their defensive stats, I think Skol is the notable weak point here with a 3-1. Donrakr's is also 3-1, but he has an ability that takes it up to 1 agi 3 res, which is a very strong stat line in a lot of cases. So I think that that's the so Skol is kind of the weak one there. In terms of health, though, Skol and Donrakr are on the high end with 21 health for Skol. And then their soul harvest stat, everyone is at 4 except for Donrakr, who's at 3. All right, so let's look a little bit at their cards and see what are their unique abilities that make them special. So you can see Donrakr, his 2 key abilities are, well, actually all of the abilities on his card are really relevant. Redirection, where the first enemy basic attack within 2 inches gets redirected to him. That's great for protecting your other heroes. Stone form, which bumps your res up to 3 at the cost of your agi going down to 1, makes him the highest res character in the game when that's active. It also makes him immune to pushes and knockdowns. So great, that's a great kind of signature ability for him. And then Stone Grasp is more situational, where he can freeze enemies in place where they can't advance. So they can use things like pushes in places to get out of that, but especially for 1-inch melee characters, it can be a very good controlling effect. All right, so next up is Sir Marcus. So he has the knockdown with 1S as a combat maneuver. That's a great synergistic ability. He can charge in, knock someone down with his shield, and then your other heroes can really pummel that hero. So I think that's if you're taking Marcus, that's one of the strongest reasons. His defender ability, where you can take an action and give someone +1 res, it's okay. You have to think that essentially you're saving 1 damage each time that hero is attacked. And so, it's hard for that to do. Maybe, it's uncommon for a hero to get attacked more than 2 or 3 times. So it would make sense if that hero is really going to get focus attacked. And then his Wall of Ice is situational again, but a great ability to block a part of the board. And if you can place it in the right spot or combine it with terrain features, it can be really great for blocking out your opponent. All right, next up is Sharn. So Sharn, she has I think her 2 most important abilities are the active abilities Get Behind Me, where she can push a friendly model up to 4 inches. That's great at the beginning of the game to help your other aggressors get up the table. It's also great later in the game when you can pull your friendly ranged aggressors out of melee. You can use it to pull heroes who have charged in back. So it's great for repositioning your pieces on the board. And then Hammer Smash is amazing. So 1 action and 1 fate, 4 true damage. That's a lot. I mean, and then place that model 6 inches directly away from this model. That's a really great ability. All right, so next up, Skol. So Skol, I'm showing 4 cards here because he has 2 different level up tracks. I'm not going to focus on those too much, but his defender ability is Bulwark, which gives 5 temporary hit points to another hero, and it expires at the beginning of his next activation. So that's a great ability for protecting your other heroes. The idea of putting 5 extra hit points on someone like a Thorgar, or etc., it just makes them a lot less. It's soaking up easily a full attack, and yeah, so I think it's really great to put it on someone who's going to then be the focus of your enemy's attacks. Soul burn is situational, but late game when someone might have 2, even 3 souls on them can be very a great damaging ability. He also has dual wield, so he attacks twice with his great axes but he has a really poor melee score. So what that means is that by default, he's probably going to be often rolling 1 die, and then it's kind of a 50-50 on doing 2 damage or not. So really bad against a lot of a lot of defenders or people with res. But if you happen to be able to knock someone down or bump up his dice, that he can actually do a lot of damage. And then in terms of his level up tracks, I think Mystic is still the most popular, with some kind of controlling abilities, blocking, friendly active abilities, or making active abilities cost an extra action. All right, so next up, Sky. So Sky, he's different than the other heroes in that he doesn't rely on res. Instead, he's a high agi hero. So, and then he also has the groundwork that even if he's knocked down, it's only a -2 penalty. His diversion ability is great, where he can spread out damage. And one thing that's important to remember with that is that if any of your heroes have armor, you can spread it out, or res, you can spread it out so that it just applies against that res. You can also use it to do things like blowing up your friendly Zarin skeletons, etc. So it's a great ability. And then Heroic Stand. Heroic Stand is an awesome ability where he can kind of stand behind some of your other heroes, and then when they're attacked, he teleports. He gives them temporary health. That teleport can potentially reduce the dice, etc. And then Dimension Warp, that's kind of when some people call it an ambulance driver ability, where he can effigy recall and pull another hero back. So it's a great way to save a hero that your opponent wants to focus down. All right, and then Thrommel. So Thrommel, again, like I mentioned earlier, he has that 2-action Warhammer attack, and he can combine that with both Concussive Blow, which is a 1S combat maneuver to give stun, and also Hammer Time, where he can do D3 damage and the knockdown condition. If Thrommel can, the key there is he needs to hit, and he was only melee 6. So if he's getting crowded out and he's only rolling 1 die, it feels pretty bad to spend 2 actions, roll 1 die, and miss. But on the other hand, if he can charge, or if he's able to use that Warhammer and stack up dice somehow, it can be a really great. He can get up to aggressor level output of damage. And then I think really worth noting, his bodyguard is just +2 res on 1 attack, so that's okay. But his level 2, where he can't be moved and knocked down, that's great for board control, where he can control shrines. And then his level 3 of Dwarf Toss is also really worth highlighting. This is an ability where people will sometimes really focus on getting Thrommel leveled up, maybe having him do a monster kill combined by the Book of Experience, Tome of Experience, to get him up to level 3, and spend a fate and an action to place this model within 6 inches and knock down all the models within 2 inches. So if you don't even have to be that clumped up. You can be almost 6 inches apart and still catch 2 enemy heroes with this. If you're knocking down 2 or 3 enemy heroes every turn, that's a really great controlling ability. All right, so just to do a quick summary of some of the comparison of these different heroes. So first question I ask is, are they fate hungry? In other words, do they want to be spending a fate almost every turn? So I think the answer is yes for Sharn and Sky, and potentially Thrommel. So Thrommel is maybe more in the middle ground. But with Sharn, Hammer Time is such a great ability. You really want to be using that every round if you can. And similar with Sky and his fate ability, his protective ability. So the other thing, I think in terms of role and what they specialize in, I think I felt like there's kind of 2 roles that they can play. They can be focused on position, in other words, contesting shrines or controlling shrines, or controlling board space, and then or protecting your other heroes. And so I think that the different heroes have different specialties. So here I said I think that Skol and Sky are best at protection. They don't really have as good of abilities to avoid to prevent them from being moved around. Although Sky's high agi does help, and then Sharn and Thrommel, I think, are uniquely good at holding positions. I think Doan'Rokkur is, especially with Sharn and her placement ability. And then with Doan'Rokkur, I think he actually is pretty good at both. For Marcus, I put neither. I think that he's just, I don't think he's amazing at holding board positions or protecting other heroes. I think his knockdown ability is kind of the wild card there. It's something, the reason that you're taking Marcus. He's obviously, all these heroes are pretty good at both position and protection, but I don't think he's a specialist at either. All right, thanks for checking this out. This was brought to you by wartable.online, where you can go play Judgment for free. Please leave any comments you have in the comment section about the descriptions I gave of the heroes or any other tips or tricks